We're here with Shea Swenson, CEO of Stonebriar Financial. How are you, Shea?
Good to be here, man.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Stonebriar Financial is wealth management, financial services, that type of thing. A lot more goes into it. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so I was in the solar game right off a mission, did the door-to-door sales, was there at Vivint, and then helped two solar companies. Ended up as a VP of sales for a company that's down back east called Summit. And so we helped build teams. We built multiple offices around the country. I really loved the business development side. That was fun. One of my actual former mission companions had two brothers in the wealth management space, and he kind of transitioned over there. And a couple of years into solar, he said, "Hey, you need to come visit these guys. Like, I think you'd be really good at this. They want to kind of branch off from their dad and want to go start their own. You know how to recruit. You know how to open up offices. You're good in kind of this transition of startup. You should go talk to them." And I ended up buying a suit for the first time. This is my mission. And driving up to Greenville, South Carolina. And they had it perfectly set. That day, they met with a massive client. I got to watch it. And it was just a, $10 million, $15 million client that they just closed. And then they happened to be on the news that night. So I just followed these two brothers that were in their late 20s, and they just seemed like they had the world at their fingertips. And so I was captivated by it. But they hired me to come in and help them because they were having to be the business owner and the professional. I was kind of the third person to kind of not be the advising, but just help with the business. Mm-hmm. Loved it. There came a time, though, and it kind of leads to this, that just because of the business, they lost a couple advisors, and it's kind of a funny story, but we had a huge event. There was like 50, 60 people showing up to this event, and he pops his tire on the road. So he's going to miss it. And he calls me, he's like, "Hey, Shea, you got to do the presentation." Like, I'd never met with the client. I knew the presentation in and out because I'd seen it a bunch. Got up there, presented, booked almost the whole room. And Chris called me the next day. He's like, you should go get licensed. You should be an advisor." And so that's when I went from transition from business development to kind of creating a career in it. And then got to the point where, okay, I knew the business. I know how to do the job. I might as well, the next step is me going and doing my own. And so we moved back to Utah about 3 years ago and started Stonebriar Financial, which is really targeted at high net worth retirees and business owners, and helping them transition, not just investing money, but also planning out income planning, tax planning, investment planning, healthcare planning, estate planning.
Yeah.
And for the retirees, it's really setting that up because they're going from accumulation to distribution now that they're retired. Now, business owners, they're still on the accumulation side, but they need things different than a W-2 employee. They need to set things in advance in preparation for the distribution side that maybe a W-2 doesn't have to, because they got a pension, they got these other resources. We have a lot of people, you've talked about this, a lot of people that are getting in their 60s and they've had a business that have paid them, but now their business isn't worth anything. They didn't have a transition because everything evolved, and they thought, I'll just build this, make money and sell it, and that will be my retirement. And it's not there. We had a guy that sells pens, has these big contracts, and he, is making $200-300 a year. He went to try to sell it, and no one would give him even 1 year of that for his clients. They're like, "No, just if you leave, we're just going to go get him."
Yeah.
So that is something that a lot of business owners don't plan out. But most of it is spent with the retirees. That's where it started. And so we've been able to come to Utah the last 3 years and really grow.
Yeah.
It's been fun. I've got a great partner, Gary, who runs a lot more of the investment management side. But a lot of this is just education. A lot of people don't understand really financial literacy.
Yeah.
And that's why we have the portfolios that struggle. We have the plans, and people run out of money when they shouldn't. It's because it's not even because they didn't have enough money. It's because they didn't understand how the system worked.
Yeah.
So that's been interesting.
And it's quite the system, right? Like, if you don't have a wealth advisor, you've got a lot to either learn on your own or find one. But golf tournament commercials are heavy.
Yes.
And you'll see a couple in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Sometimes they'll go in reverse, and they'll be like, "Oh, we're so glad we met with our Prudential advisor."
Yes.
And you can imagine, like, "Oh, we make this much, or we just got an inheritance. How do we grow old and maintain this lifestyle, not pays many taxes, all of that, right? I assume this is what you do constantly.
Every day.
Planning, advising, and strategizing.
Yep.
It's not the key does not fit the same hole every time, right?
And you can't. And that's the system, unfortunately. And I tell this a lot. About 20 years ago, the custodians, Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab, these big custodians, they changed because Vanguard changed broker fees and they got rid of trade fees.
Yep.
And they lost a lot of revenue. They got a lot of attention for that and value brand wise. But these companies, they lost revenue. They made a lot of money off that. So everyone thought that was such a great thing, which it was. But the consequence of that is all these custodians just started to make their own funds to put the clients in. And that's how they got the revenue back. And so what's happened is no one's held any of these funds accountable for their actual performance because their brand is so big. They're like, it's Vanguard. Why? It must be a great fund. Yeah. Why would people have $80 billion in that fund if it wasn't good? Mm-hmm. But they're not realizing how that money got there and that people actually were just put into there from their 401k or from that thing. So because everything's evolved, technology's evolved, everything, the problem that I see in financial or any wealth management is that's great. There's a lot of great people that do it. But how do you, if the client or the consumer doesn't know how to hold it accountable, then they're just fully trusting the person on the other side without any way to hold them accountable for anything. And I think that's when I say education, that's probably been the most interesting thing being in Utah compared to Florida. I feel like Utah have more than the average person in Florida did. Obviously, there's people in Florida that have stupid amounts of money.
Yeah.
But the financial literacy is much lower here than it is there. I think people know how to make money more here. I think people know how to maybe spend less than they're making more than Florida. But there's people with millions of dollars that come in my office that don't know certain things that are pretty common financial literacy strategies. And the reason why they have so much money, rightfully, is because they knew how to make it.
Yeah.
They were good at a job. They knew how to make it. They spent less than they made, and they ended up accumulating naturally over that time. But now they have to live off that.
Yeah.
And now more than ever, they're realizing like, oh, I can't just go make more money. I have to make this money last me 25 years. And that's where even people of high net worth, ultra high net worth, most of them are actually pretty humble once they realize that they're in this transition.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, I need help. But we just start with education before advice, before direction, before anything. Let's make sure we have a foundation that's on the same page. And I feel like I tell my partner, Gary, like, I feel like coming to Utah, we've gone back in time, where in Florida, more of the firms have already evolved to doing that.
Yeah.
And it's starting to happen here. I think I see it more even the last 3 years, but it's still behind. So it's been good for the business.
Yeah.
Because it's given us an edge to be able to come in and be able to bring value to people pretty quickly. So,
and it's good across the board, right? Because you put 30, 40 years in, maybe you're just a high paid employee or it's your company. Some people want to do it till the day they die, but a lot of people want to go see what Rome looks like and do all of this and maybe give their grandkids. This takes strategizing and planning. You factor in their health.
Yep.
Got health insurance. That's a really old business. Annuities.
Yep.
Things like that. It'd probably be pretty fun to craft this with a new client, I would imagine.
It is fun, and it takes more than, something I learned with Goldman Sachs, and we can love them or hate them, but kind of going back to this concern, we have this different type of investment management or wealth management depending on your net worth. Like if you have $0 to $9,999,000, you have a completely different businesses that are coming to you versus the $10 million plus, and they call that the private wealth management.
Yeah.
Private wealth management is not doing just investment management. It is doing insurance management, healthcare management, tax management, estate management. It's doing all of them together. So I went and did an internship. It was really a visit. And I went into one of their meetings and they had an investment advisor, an insurance advisor, an estate attorney, and a tax advisor in the same room discussing it together. They weren't making investment decisions without tax planning, but that is not how it's done for the clients with under 10 million. Yeah. It's all volume based. So they go to their CPA who files as many taxes as they can. It's volume. Doesn't mean they're bad. That's what they do. their investment management are just managing their investments. They're not planning their taxes. They're not going in there and saying, hey, your Roth IRA maybe should be invested more aggressively than your IRA, but you have them in the same things right now because they weren't planning on taxes. They were just looking at the investments.
Yep.
And so I think it's common sense to think, hey, all of these decisions, healthcare, estate planning, are all wealth management. I think we think wealth management as what stocks do I pick or what but it's much more, and it's been kind of exclusive to this group. But I think with technology, we're starting to see that people are kind of waking up to, hey, yeah, why is it done this way?
Mm-hmm.
And the powers are big. Like you said, it's a big industry, old industry. They want them separate. It works better for them if everything's separate. But I think holistic planning is the future. I know it is. Whether advisors change or not, the technology is going to come in and do it anyways. But there's still room for the best in the world because not everyone's going to trust the software.
Yeah,
they want software to do the things that they, the robot things that can just be done. But they still want a strategist that helps them understand maybe how to utilize their money, not just how to save the most amount, but like, what should I be doing with it to make change or difference? They still want somebody that can give them an ear for that. So,
and it's nice. It gives you that confidence and like one less thing to worry about. If you don't want to spend all the time and effort, they pay you guys.
And some of the times I just had an individual, I got a text from him. He's in his 80s. He's getting old. And it's interesting because, my grandma, I was raised by my grandparents. My grandma kind of managed the money. My grandpa didn't. I didn't watch that man write a check till my grandma died. Like, he's never done it. And then sometimes it's the opposite. In this case, this client is the one that's handled everything. So I've seen that and he's done a good job at managing it. But then he comes to the point like, hey, my wife doesn't want to do any of this. So I just want somebody that I can vet and trust. And so some of it is, I actually tell a lot of clients, I think some of the things they could do themselves. And I think I think it's a good thing because that means they'd have to educate themselves so they can be able to do it and to give them, ability to hold anybody accountable. But there is people that, I've worked a lot. I just want to not worry about it. I want to find a firm that is holistic, that has multiple people, not just one person around the table, multiple people that are strategists in taxes or in investments, but are communicating with each other instead of one guy trying to be everything.
Yeah.
And it's just not going to happen.
Yeah. And one way to learn is just read, or understand horror stories of not doing this and paying way too much in taxes, or your partner dies.
Yep.
And they were a big chunk of the intellectual capital plus the equity. And in retrospect, you're like, oh, gosh, there's so many things we could have done. But you've stepped in it by then.
Yep. And
you got problems. One of those, I believe, is called like buy-sell agreements or key man.
Key man. So
explain those.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. East Coast, West Coast, I've seen a difference. East Coast, I always think of lawyers more because that's where I started my career. Like, every deal that I ever saw businesses was very lawyered, structured. Like, you go into partnership with somebody, it is lined up, and you have these things. Here in Utah, which is, I think, such a good part of it, is we are like dreamers, and we're like, hey, we got a partner. Let's go build a big business. We don't know if it's going to work out. And we've had $1 billion businesses.
Yeah.
And it's sometime down the line, there has to be that kind of sometimes awkward conversation of, hey, what if one of us dies?
Yeah.
Like, what's the plan? And what happens, I've had this multiple times in my career, or the stories. It's usually the stories of people older in their lives coming in and telling me, I actually had a business. I've had this multiple times. Had a business. My partner passed away. And it was awkward because I didn't know how to buy out the widow.
Yeah.
And there was no plan beforehand. And so the risk that you take of that is you've got, let's say, 50-50 partnership. Let's say one of them passes away. How do you, if that spouse gets that ownership, what's her rights to it or his rights to that?
Yeah.
Are they capable of running the business? How do you buy them out? Right? Are you going to be able to get a loan to buy them out? What is that? Have we talked about it? One of the simple things when you're young is just key man insurance. You buy life insurance based on the value of the business to buy out the other partner. So if me and you are partners, their businesses worth $5 million, $2.5 million each, we would get a He-Man life insurance policy of $2.5 million. If you pie out or you pass away, the policy pays out to your spouse.
Yeah.
And that buys her out of the business. Now you can put contingents on there that it buys out to her, but she has rights to maybe keep the business. You can write it in the buy-sell agreements. You can write these things kind of how you want, like a trust you can for estate planning. But it allows you to have those things in order. It's risk you take off the table. And I say this with my wife, like I have no worry about me being able to make money throughout my life. But if I got killed in a car wreck, different story.
Yeah.
Like there's time. And so for, a 30-year-old, a 30-year policy for $1 million, $25 a month. So for $100 a month is $4 million. I at least know, that if I die, my wife's got $4 million plus a buy sale with my partner on my business value on the Keyman policy. Like my spouse and my kids are going to be taken care of.
Yeah.
At least from a financial standpoint. And when you're young, it's cheap.
Yep.
And when you're generally healthy, it's cheap. If you wait, then it's not cheap. And so just like anything, it's, Chick-fil-A costs freaking $15 right now for a meal. That's 2 of them in $1 million coverage. And we have a ton of married couples in Utah making $300,000-$400,000 a year with kids that don't have even life insurance on themselves when it could cost them $25 a month or, $100 a month, whatever it is. And so let alone business partners that have, $10 million valuations of businesses, but they don't really quite know how to do that. Yeah. And that's something we've done a lot more the last year. Is I saw it as I've talked to business owners and like, okay, none of these people have this.
Yeah.
Where I have just kind of like we saw on the retirement planning side, okay, in the business, we have more businesses started here, probably per capita than most places, but there's not this education, financial education on the business owner to structure it when there's a partner.
Yeah.
And then the last part of it, it's not just has to be a business partner. Let's say you have your first employee that's been your rock, that's your COO, that's making really good money. Well, what if they pass away? What's the plan? You can buy Keyman insurance on Keyman or women, right? That if they pass away, the business gets paid that money to have enough time to replace or go hire a replacement to come in.
Yeah.
And that's really why it's there. That's why they allow you to buy it on an employee or a business partner, because there's risk there to protect to protect this business. And when you're really 60 and younger, it's cheap. And even 60 and older, depending on when you want to sell the business or retire, it's not crazy expensive for the risk of not having it.
Yeah.
So I don't know why it's not. It's really should be, maybe it's on the attorneys that are setting up these LLCs to kind of be like, hey, do you got these things in order? I don't know if that's being done, but I'm seeing more and more businesses that have done really well that don't have they don't even have a buy-sell agreement. Like they don't even have, even if they wanted to sell their business, there's nothing in place that actually tells them what the rights are of each partner and or the equity that they gave to some guy, but it's not really legally structured properly.
Yep.
So I think that's something that's kind of been our we've been tackling that a lot more as we've been meeting with business owners and just seeing that pattern that it's not there. And those are simple fixes. Like it's hard when you're 70 and you don't have enough money. It's hard to fix that. It's easy to solve risk when you're young.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, a little ounce of prudence goes a long ways. And that's when you hear about like broken friendships, broken families, and it all could have been mitigated with fairly common sense tools and applications there.
Yep, absolutely.
You also have something called StonebriarX, which is, I'll leave it to you to explain because it's a lot of things.
Yeah, I think because I started in the business development world, I always, there's that entrepreneur in me always that's like, hey, I love what I do. I actually took a break last year for a few months and regretted it. Like I was glad, I'm happy where I'm at with my day job. But I have these projects that have always come up. I've been naturally a connector. I think I read Malcolm Gladwell's book, probably 5-6 years ago. And the first time that I was like, oh, I'm a connector. Mm-hmm. Like that's what I naturally done. I've just never had somebody explain that to me. And so I've got opportunities to have these projects. And so where do I put them in this business? Because it's not directly tied to the wealth management side. So we just launched StonebriarX. And it's kind of jokingly my side quests of these projects that are not my focus of revenue or focus on that, but it kind of focus on making sure my relationships are strong and putting things together. And it's just gotten bigger and bigger that I've just had to formalize it into something, because we've got involved in some pretty cool projects. And it started with, really actually I was working with a couple of the universities on this new NIL, this name, image, and likeness. And it started from the financial literacy standpoint. Hey, now how do we teach these players financial literacy? What tools do they need to have? But then it led into, okay, how do brands get involved with NIL? Now these college kids can get paid. And now with the NCAA's new ruling a couple weeks ago, there's a good opportunity. The schools can now pay them. There's still a lot of legal stuff that will be handled in the next year. But these brands, I jokingly, and this is what, after working kind of on the financial literacy side, I had a couple of the BYU players reach out to me, and I was working deals for them, and I kind of found brands that I thought that they should connect with, and I was just connecting people, and that was where the X comes in, is just kind of connecting people. But then I realized, okay, there's a lot of people are spending $200,000, $400,000, $800,000 on these sponsorships at these universities, and especially the universities, and before NIL, and still currently, they can't use the players. Right. So you do a brand deal with UVU, right? You can have your logo on the stadium. You can have your logo. You can do campaigns, but you can't use the players. Right. And there's little bits that you can do, but you can't necessarily use the players. But now with NIL, you can still have a sponsorship with the school, which gives you the logo. You see all the logo, Ken Garf on the freeway. Hey, partnered here. We have their logo, BYU's logo, UVU's logo. But now with the player, you can go directly to the player and do a brand deal with them to have them a part of the commercial or on the billboard, and actually pay them for their name, image, and likeness. But now, if you've seen those commercials where it's like Shaquille O'Neal icy hot, but he's not actually in the Lakers jersey, it's like awkward, and you're like, we know that's a fake jersey. Well, with schools having the logo structure, if you do a sponsorship there, you get the logo. The player can actually be in the jersey if you have both. Mm-hmm. And I just thought, why aren't they doing this? Why aren't these schools seeing that? It seemed like there was a fight between one side or the other. It should be both. And that's what led me to these athletes and kind of working with brands and finding ways to kind of bring the brand, the athlete, and maybe the charity or the philanthropic mission together. And that's also where the X kind of comes in, is how do I bring people together to go do cool projects? But I think the NIL has just evolved so much that brands, I think, have just been worried because they don't know exactly how it lays out. And these schools have kind of held on to their sponsorships because they're so worried that they'll lose them, and I get it. It's this battle of, I think they want to have the same goal and go win national championships and go be good student athletes. But now you have multiple people that's fighting for the same money. Yeah. And where does that go? And I think that's something where there's a lot of opportunity, especially in Utah, where if people will spend the time to understand the rules and laws of the adapt, I think they can leverage a lot of these athletes that have personalities that Puka Nakua is a good, he's done a lot with Murdoch, and they took a bet on him when he wasn't, the high draft pick, and it's paid out. They just gave his mom a car, and they had this video that went viral. Why? Because they started with an NIL deal, and that player ended up, they ended up continuing to take care of them. So I think it's a great example of how it works. And it got tens of millions of views. LeBron posted, I think, like there's a lot that comes from the starting point of building that relationship. And so something we've done though, because that's kind of the connections, but these athletes need financial literacy too. Yeah. They need not only financial literacy, but they also need to know legal. How do you legal structure? And you've got you got a lot of people coming at them. And I think parents more than ever that's got that good kid, male or female, they've got to prep these kids because money's coming faster. Yeah. And that means, they're going to be in bigger rooms than they expected earlier. Yeah. And you just, obviously you set the table there with why you created StonebriarX, but you find things interesting, and then it seems like you take deep dives and kind of become a subject matter expert. And that's exactly what happened with, I did not go into the collective thinking that's where I would go. It was, I found that, and then I found, oh, I don't understand this. And then you dig into it. And then all of a sudden, you know, I'd ran into a BYU player and it's like, oh, I've been to your office. Like, you were teaching us about NIL. And I was like, I was just learning. I was just communicating what I was learning. And a lot of these players didn't know how to take advantage. They're kind of just waiting on others to come in and take care of them. And I'm like, no, this is your opportunity. I think Cody Epps has done an amazing job, wide out for BYU, of not waiting till people come to him. He went and reached out. He went through his own golf tournament last week. Like, he's taking advantage of the opportunity because he wants to get into business after this. He wants to understand, and what a better time when you're on a big platform and everyone wants to come watch you play. That's the time that you take advantage of that in a positive way. And I think that's something, there's educating brands, there's educating charities, there's educating players. And I think there's a huge marketing opportunity if you can get creative.
Yeah.
But I think, like most influencer marketing, like, I don't want to pay that person just to do a post. I'm like, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying put a campaign together.
Yeah. Put
a charity, get people involved, and it's not even spending more money. You're probably spending a bunch of money in marketing. Just re-look at where you're spending the money. I jokingly said to some of these universities, we're getting $500,000 at the university. I'm like, why don't they just pay $100,000 and do $400,000 in law scholarships? They're going to get more branding and marketing. They still get the logo from the school. Yeah. Like, why are they paying all this money if they can't even use the athletes, which are the most marketable people? But now you can. Yeah. You just can't do it through this one structure. At least for now, we'll see how that changes. So like, I think it was something. And then I got into the politics side, kind of the same thing. And I realized, like, oh, athletes, you know, need financial literacy and they need an exit plan once sports are over. Well, there's politicians that have the same issue. Like, okay, you know, whether we like them or we don't like them, they gave up time to go work and be a public servant. That's what that's what they're wanting to be. We call them politicians, but they're supposed to be representing us. But they leave law jobs, they leave big careers. Yeah. And then they're done. Yep. And what's the plan? And they weren't making a whole lot. And that's what we have, obviously, issues from, you know, Senate and Congress and corruption, as they say. But a lot of them just didn't, just like anything, they didn't have a plan. And so that was their plan. Oh, somebody else, lobbyists can take care of me. Right. And so I saw this, you know, these commonalities amongst athletes, politicians, and like, no, they should all be working together. Yeah. And there's certain campaigns that will work and certain ones that won't. But that's fun for me. That creates experiences that I couldn't pay for, but you get those opportunities as you put these people together, and hopefully good things come from it. Yeah.
I love watching you do your thing, both on the wealth management side and the StonebriarX side. And a lot of it's just free knowledge from Shea, right? And if anything comes from it, it will. But whether you're high on the hog, you know, 21-year-old basketball player, I don't know, I'm talking out of my butt here, 99% chance that that's going to end when you're 22.
100%. Yep.
But if you can get $30,000 from the Snow Shack, nice little start there, right? A year later, you're going to be doing what everybody else does, which is work. But, you know, a lot of them will have money, and we have all heard the horror stories of that, and it just evaporates. So you're not the stereotypical wealth manager in a suit and wingtips. I love that you're thinking outside the box with that one.
Well, I think there is, I get it. I tell people all the time, like, money, I get why people are motivated by money. But actually, when I did door-to-door sales, I used to think I wish I was more motivated by money because I would have made more money. Yeah. But I've always been attracted to the experience. I've always been attracted to, my grandpa was a coach. He raised me. He didn't make much money at all, but he was a legend in our town. And I realized, you know, I got the luxury to say, like, oh, you didn't need money to be influential. Like, it can be, absolutely. That's one of the paths. But you can be a teacher and a driver's ed teacher and actually impact, you know, thousands and over time, hundreds of thousands of people through lineage, like through their kids and their kids. And I watch that. And so I will always sacrifice money for the hope of something better down the line.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, like, I think I get multiple times, people are like, why are you doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because I do see some value long term. I just don't know what it would be, but why not?
Yeah.
Why not help that person and see the success? Because I wish everyone had good financial literacy. Yeah, maybe we lose some clients? Maybe we would if people, could do it themselves. Maybe I'm losing a job, but I think the world would be a better place if everyone, took the time to be educated. And I think that's what you are supposed to do. And so it's been fun, but also coming back to Utah, like I wanted to come in with that mindset of like, I don't need anything from anybody. I'm just going to come in, and I kind of knew how to start the business. Gary and I we knew what we were doing. I didn't need any referrals or friends and family. Like I didn't need any of that. And so because our business has been able to grow and we have our ups and downs, but our business has been able to grow, I'm able to do these things without needing a compensation for it.
Yeah.
So I'm not kind of missing out on the greater upside. I think so many people take the short term and then they never get the opportunity of what would have been bigger if they just gave and gave and gave.
Yeah.
They would have got a bigger result at the end. And I think I've always had hope that there was bigger things ahead, and maybe that connection, many times people I know they reach out to you too, reach out to me and say, hey, I need a favor. And I'm like, I know that guy, boom. And we just solved a crisis that for that person, maybe not for me, it's not a big deal. For that person, it was a huge deal.
Yeah.
But because I know them, boom, like that's a win.
Yeah.
That's a win for me, and it's always been. So
I love it.
It's been fun to connect with people like you. There's so many of these connectors and getting to know the ins and outs of Utah back again. Like it's funny how close knitted Utah is, but I do think that as much as there's amazing growth, amazing business, and there is a lot of good, I think we have to continue to push that it's bigger than just the valuations of the business.
Yeah, for
like,
sure.
what are we actually creating? What are we actually solving?
Yeah.
In the community? If not, we'll end up like Silicon Valley.
Right.
Yeah, you'll have a peak and you'll have great things, but doesn't mean the community around you is actually thriving.
Correct. Yeah.
So I think we're still in the beginning stages of all of it, but Silicon Valley is the peak of all of this and venture capital and all this. And I don't think many people are like, I want to go live there.
Right.
They built businesses, but didn't create community that actually made people want to stay for longer than the peaks.
Yeah.
So.
I like your mindset there. I like your ideology. Being prepared and setting a plan is really helpful for when it hits the fan, either in a good way or a bad way. So if folks want to get in contact with you or Stonebriar Financial, best ways.
Yeah, so we have StonebriarFinancial.com. It will lead you. Being in the wealth management space, we actually have an investment management company. We have a financial services company. It's kind of between different industries or different, from insurance to securities, it's different. And so StonebriarFinancial.com is where you can find us and reach out. And our kind of thing is because we're selective in who we work with, whether it's business owners or even retirees, we don't have a minimum, but we understand okay, we get to choose our clients as much as they get to choose us.
Right.
Because of that, we do a set of reports for everybody. Anybody that comes in, we will do a full financial, I call it the blood work, but full financial review on investments, taxes, estate planning. And then for businesses, it's the same structure, but we're looking, with income planning, it's cash flow planning, right? You have expense planning. It's just a different level for businesses. But now we have, instead of a marriage, it's a partnership, and so it's a different set of reports, and it's a little bit more focused on accumulation and downside risk protection, where retirement's more of just distribution. Yeah. But we have a set of reports for either. And so people just come on, we jump on a Zoom call, you come on in, we do a full review. I always say, if a doctor just walked in, checked your vitals for a second and was like, hey, you need to do heart surgery, what do they know? Right? They'll know, maybe they thought this or that. I'm like, no, you want to do blood work. You want to go into the details before you go make big structural changes to investments or planning. And so if people don't first get their blood work done or their financial blood work done, and then number two, actually understand how to read it.
Yeah.
Right? We're just blindly trusting a lot of people, from a lawyer to a financial advisor to an insurance. We're just blindly trusting people. And the reason why is because we don't know how to hold them accountable.
Yeah.
And so that's the very first thing that we've done it the last 4 or 5 years, even though I worked for a different firm, is like, no, I will not give advice until blood work is done.
Yeah.
And that they understand what we're seeing just as much as I understand it. And then we have a foundation. And so people are welcome to come in and get a review. And then we see if there's a relationship that makes sense. But hopefully, even if it's not, that there's value that's been given in education.
Yeah.
And some people have come in and they're like, we're just going to do that ourselves. I'm like, great, that's fine. Like, I'm glad that at least they learned something and they were able to apply something that helped them, even if they didn't use our services for it.
Yeah. I love it. Low pressure. Very nice. Thank you so much, Shea. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Garrett. Thanks.